I've got in the background here an API with an endpoint for product in this case. So if we poll this API, we get this product B, another description comes back from that endpoint. So it's API/product. What we're trying to do is bind that API to this data grid. So there's 3 products in the table at the moment. And this detail and this second table are bound to the properties of the form, and this data grid's selected data property is bound to that property of the form as well. This property at the form level is bidirectional. This one's unidirectional. So if we have a quick look at that in Ignition, in perspective, that actually looks a bit like this. So on here, ignore the red because it's not actively polling the API, so it's not filling them in. So we have the data itself is bound to this products array, the 3 elements, and the selected product is the data, the selection data for the grid. So it's being written on selection to this selected product property of the parent form, the custom property of the parent form. That's bidirectional. And that data is here. That selected row data that's in the selected element property here, selected product, is bound to this. So that is selected product, first element, product ID, and so on. This is bound to the same thing, selected product. So what happens is if I click on one of these, the form level selected product variable is filled with the selected row, and then that selected row is then bound to this, and this table. So if I edit these, the binding here updates, but the binding here doesn't. What we want to do is on the updating of that binding here, we want to trigger the API post method and write back to the database. So what that looks like in Postman is if we take the product ID and the unit of measure ID and we pass in yet another description and we post, we call the put method and we put or post to that API endpoint, we get a 204 no content returned. And then if we query it again, this should change from another description. There we go, yet another description. So we're trying to trigger that workflow from this form. So what that looks like in practice on here is that we have the products being bound to that API, the get method of that API, which then returns this product information, which we've already seen. That binds to this products array. When we click on one of these, it's bound to the selected product. That selected product has a post method or a put method, and that put method passes in a header and it should pass in a body, and the body should look something like the body that we have here. For some reason I can't get the formatting of this correct and I can't get it to accept the expression that makes a text string look like this from those fields that are in the selected product array of the form properties. So when we look at that in perspective, we can now, let's reload that page. Okay, so product B was one we're looking at, yet another description. So if I change this to more description, we should be able to see in here, see how it changes because it's bound. This one doesn't change because the binding is oh, it does when you click on it. Oh, there you go. It's because the binding's two-way on that one. Either way, we want the call to the put method to trigger that API endpoint like we did with Postman to make it work, but I can't get the expression to work for me.